We want to consider an introduction to software. Now, I cannot um, say enough how huge of a topic this is, and I've dared to try to capture it in just a few slides. But this is just designed to give you kind of a general understanding. This whole class, Intro to Computing, is about looking at different types of software, the devices on which that software is installed, and then how we use it to solve real world challenges and to just enjoy life and experience life and to live life safely. So, with that said, let's dive into this super high level overview of software. So, what is software? I wanted to give you kind of a progressively complex way of understanding it. So, in 8 words, software is the set of instructions that tell a computer what to do, whether that's to open a program or to allow you to create a file or type into a file or visit a web page. Software is the set of tools that allows a human to give instructions to a computer and also for the computer to then navigate individual instructions internally based on the needs that we have requested. With a bit more complexity, software is a set of programs or instructions that enable computers to perform certain tasks from simple operations to complex processing. So, from the very simplest thing that we may do on our phone to something more complex that's in use at some kind of a manufacturing plant or in a research lab or a hospital. Um, that full range is all captured by different types of software. And finally, a more specific, more technical definition here in 50 words. The coded instructions, programs, and data directing a computer's hardware to perform specific tasks. Some of these other topics here I'm gonna cover in a moment, so I won't read this whole thing word for word, but do want to emphasize the fact that it's the way we give instructions to a computer so the hardware does certain tasks based on the instructions of the software. Okay, so out of that huge range of software programs, we really can divide them into 3 categories. Now, I want to put your mind at ease. Most programs easily fit into just one of these 3 categories. There are some that kind of skirt the line, but generally, this is a way we kind of group things into these 3 categories. So, first, operating systems. This is the program that allows you to use a device to install programs, to open and run programs. Um, the most common operating systems that you all are familiar with are Mac OS on a MacBook, Windows on a laptop, a Windows laptop computer, and then also iOS, Android, Watch OS, those specific operating systems that run on a device. There are other operating systems as well. Not too many of you are familiar with Linux, but um, you've got a lot of captains and other departments, and like in the School of Engineering and Computing, where many of them are using Linux for a more custom experience. That is a type of open source software, which is in a later slide. Next, utility software. So the utility software is the type of program that allows us to use a device more efficiently or more safely. I've got a whole video on that here for you. But it's tools. You don't buy a device so that you can use utility software, but you use utility software to get the most out of your device. So things like virus protection, battery monitors, any of those sorts of programs would fall into the category of utility software. And then we have application software, and these are the reasons you buy the device. So whether it's for productivity or entertainment or anything else, we use application software the most to accomplish different tasks. So this includes everything from your web browser to your office programs like Microsoft Office, um, tools like GarageBand and Illustrator. All of those programs are things that you would use, use the computer again for creativity or productivity or entertainment. Those are the different types of programs that we put into the category of application software. Again, some tools kind of skirt the lines. Um, Sometimes an operating system manufacturer will find a utility software program that someone has created and they will fold that functionality into the operating system. For example, long time ago, computers did not have thumbnails for your images. So if you just had a folder full of images, they just had the names and you couldn't actually see a thumbnail preview of the photo. There was a developer who created a separate Windows program that would show thumbnails. It was a thumbnail viewer program. And so eventually Windows and Mac were like, hey, why isn't this in the operating system? So brilliant idea. So they added that into the operating system. Now thumbnails are just a part of how the devices work. And sadly, that software package became obsolete. So that happens often. And then you can kind of make a case for some utility programs being application software. So you may run across something, not be exactly sure which category it falls into, but generally those three big definitions are a good way for us to organize the tools that we use. So how it's made, um, generally, how do people create software? They follow the systems development lifecycle. It's often called the software development lifecycle, but is very similar to what we've learned. They use flowcharts. So if you look at different ways to use a flowchart to create a set of instructions for a person to follow, you create a flowchart in order to determine how a software program should be designed and what steps you want the computer to follow. So have it follow steps one, two, and three, and then it reaches a decision. If there's enough space to store this file, then store the file. If not, then give an error message. And then loops where you have a step that repeats until something changes or repeats a certain number of times. As far as the development, there are a large number of programming languages that are used to create software. Most of them, you type out the steps in some kind of code. Some of you will have heard of Python as one programming language. C++ is another programming language. PHP is a programming language that's used for websites. Um, so you write those instructions in code, writing that code in a specific way, following what's called the syntax of that language. In the same way, there are different spoken languages, there are different types of programming languages. And most of those programs have to run through a special type of software called a compiler in order to turn it into machine language that a computer can understand and follow its steps. So, shortest definition of the software development process, but that's kind of to tie it into the concepts that we cover in this intro to computing class. So, as far as licensing goes, there's a separate document on that. I just want to give you context for all the information that I've provided to you in Scholar. The licensing is, if you think about the way we have driver's licenses in this country, so you have to meet certain criteria to get a driver's license. And that license gives you permission to drive, but it doesn't give you permission to drive too fast, doesn't give you permission to drive on a sidewalk. In the same way, software licenses are created by the software developers. They determine how you can use their software. And it's important for you to be a good digital citizen and follow the guidelines of the licenses. Again, there's a full list of different license types, shareware, um, things like that that you can look at. We also have the difference I want to mention between proprietary versus open source software. So with proprietary software, you are you have a program created by Microsoft, for example, or Adobe, and no one can see what specific instructions were given within that software program as it was written. So they have kind of their secret sauce of how they're telling computers to run their software, and that's proprietary. It's covered by a lot of federal laws, and that's that category of software. Open source software, as the name implies, is where a developer can see the source code. You can see the instructions that were given to the program. And then you are allowed to manipulate that to create your own versions. So, for example, um, there's a open source e-commerce program that I used in the past. And so it's designed to create e-commerce websites like the way Shopify works or WooCommerce. Since that program was open source, someone was able to go in and create a one of those like We Buy Gold company things where the gold prices are based on the current value of gold. And so it works differently from a typical shopping cart, and they're able to create a special version of the software because it was open source software. So that just dictates how you have permission to use a program, and then how much of the background, the back end, all of everything running behind the scenes is proprietary and secret and legally protected in that way, or open source and available for manipulation. Be mindful though that even open source software also has licenses and certain things you are and are not allowed to do with those programs. Using software. Two main ways that you use software programs. You either locally install them on your device, so you download software to your device, or you use what's called software as a service. Again, I've got some separate videos on that, but basically, software as a service is when you log into a website and you're using the software on the company's servers and not on your own computer. So you are just using, for example, Safari or Google Chrome, going to a website and using the software there. You did not have to download anything locally your except for your your web browser. This can be a little bit confusing because there are programs that give different methods. You can download it or use software as a service. And that brings us to our next slide. So how is software distributed? So as I just finished mentioning, sometimes you go to a physical store or download through the mail, and you download you physically obtain a physical copy of the software. So this could be on a disk or a flash drive or something like that. You obtain that, you have physical, you can hold it in your hand, and then you install it onto your computer. There are also online downloads where you go to a company's website, you download the software, and with that file that you downloaded, you install it onto your computer. And then I just finished mentioning software as a service. Um, Sometimes the company keeps the software on their own servers, and then you just log into their server through your web browser with an account that you create. There are many different pros and cons to each of these methods, and just want to give you kind of an overview of ways that you can obtain software. I do want to mention though, with online downloads, it's very, very important that you so carefully um, look at what you're downloading. There are a lot of ads that are designed with a big green download button inside of an ad. And if you're moving too fast, you're just like, oh, I'm downloading something, click the green download button. Then you end up with software in your computer that's not supposed to be there. And that could be giving you viruses or spying on you or anything like that. So you definitely have to be super careful when you're doing an online download that you are getting legitimate software from the source you think you're getting it from, and that it's that it's something you're allowed to or that you want to have installed in your computer. So that again is an overview. So much to cover in software, but this should help you figure out how to tie all of the concepts of the this unit of the class together.